Florida leads the nation when it comes to imposing death sentences.
Right now, we have 404 death row inmates. Only California has more. State lawmakers agree something needs to be done. Maybe we reduce the number of inmates by changing the rules and speeding up executions. Or maybe we require juries reach a unanimous decision before recommending death in the first place. Both of these ideas are being considered. The answers won't come easy, though, because when it comes to the death penalty, there is so much to consider. Take, for example, the case of Tommy Zeigler. He was 29 years old when a judge sentenced him to death. In a few months, Tommy Zeigler will turn 68, if he lives that long.
In the justice system, once the decision is made, it's like it's set in concrete.
Tommy's swift journey to death row began on the night before Christmas, 1975. Tommy called police to his Winter Garden furniture store around 9 o'clock. They found Tommy bleeding from a bullet wound to the gut. Detectives also found a bloody massacre. 4 bodies. Tommy's wife, Eunice, her parents, Perry and Virginia Edwards, and a customer named Charlie Mays. They arrested Tommy when he woke up after surgery.
I was numb. I just couldn't believe that they were thinking that I killed somebody.
7 short months later, Tommy Zeigler was on death row.
It was a railroad job.
State prosecutors made the case that Tommy was motivated by greed. He had recently taken out 2 life insurance policies worth $250,000 each on his wife Eunice. He killed her parents because they showed up at the furniture store unexpectedly. Tommy beat the customer Charlie Mays to death with a carpet crank because he needed someone to blame. And to make his story of a botched robbery more convincing, Tommy shot himself. This is how the state presented the facts, based on circumstantial evidence and not one eyewitness. State Attorney Jeff Ashton has fought to keep Tommy Zeigler on death row since taking over the case in 1989. You are convinced, without a shadow of a doubt, this man is guilty?
There's no other explanation for the evidence.
Tommy's legal team felt the deck was stacked against them from the beginning, starting with a judge assigned to oversee the trial. He was no stranger. Judge Maurice Paul and Tommy testified on opposite sides of an unrelated case. Tommy stood up for Andrew James, who was threatened with the loss of his liquor license at Brown's Bar.
I think Judge Paul was definitely biased and prejudiced against me because we had been on opposite sides of a case just 5 or 6 months prior to my trial. And a lieutenant with the beverage department that was a friend of his was fired because of my testimony.
Tommy's lawyers filed 3 motions asking Judge Paul to step aside. He refused and ignored our request to talk about it. Now that he was facing a speedy trial, Tommy's challenge was to convince a jury in a hurry that he was not a killer. He portrayed himself as the 5th victim from that Christmas Eve bloodbath. Tommy says he asked his handyman, Ed Williams, to drive him back to the store in Williams' truck so they could make some last-minute deliveries before Tommy met up with his family at a Christmas party later that night. Tommy came in through the back door. He says the lights were out, wouldn't work. And he didn't know that Eunice and her parents had also come to the store about a half hour earlier to pick out a new chair for Mr. Edwards. It was going to be his Christmas present. Tommy says when he came through the door, 2 men ambushed him from behind, hit him in the back of the head. They struggled. Tommy reached for a gun that he kept in a desk drawer, and he says he used it as a club. You never fired a shot?
Not to my knowledge, no.
But someone fired a shot into Tommy's stomach. That's when he hit the floor and briefly blacked out. When he came around, he called for help. Medics rushed him to the hospital where he was arrested. Jurors spent 3 days deliberating. One juror, the final holdout, claimed that she was coerced into voting guilty.
That feeling's innocent.
The jury recommended life in prison, but Judge Paul had other plans. It was July 1976, the month Florida reinstated the death penalty, and Judge Paul decided to use it on Tommy.
As far as his thinking about the death penalty, I don't think about that because I figured that all this is in God's hands, Mr. Bailey.
Through the years, lawyers for Tommy Zeigler have filed motions for post-conviction relief to no avail. Last month, the Florida Supreme Court denied his request for a second round of DNA testing because the court said it could not prove that he was not the killer. Tommy has one more appeal pending. It involves newly discovered evidence, and we'll tell you more about that tomorrow night.
Well, where is this Judge Maurice Paul today?
Well, Maurice Paul is a federal judge in the Northern District of Florida. He was appointed by Ronald Reagan in 1982, so he is still out there serving, but he had no interest in speaking to me because I called him to ask him about this case. And there is so much to this story that needs to be told, and we'll continue to tell it tomorrow.
And you're going to tell it in a half-hour documentary.
A half-hour special this coming Sunday.
All right. Very interesting case. Thank you.